The Pontiac Firebird is an automobile which was built by the Pontiac division of General Motors between 1967 and 2002. The Firebird was introduced the same year as the automaker's platform-sharing model, the Chevrolet Camaro. This coincided with the release of the 1967 Mercury Cougar, which shared its platform with another pony car, the Ford Mustang. The vehicles were powered by various 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, and V8 engines sourced from several GM divisions. While primarily Pontiac-powered until 1977, Firebirds were built with several different engines from nearly every GM division until 1982, when GM began to discontinue engines it felt were unneeded and either spread successful designs from individual divisions among all divisions or use new engines of corporate architecture. The name Firebird was also previously used by General Motors for the unrelated concept cars. First generation: the first-generation Firebirds had a characteristic Coke bottle styling. Unlike its cousin, the Chevrolet Camaro, its bumpers were integrated into the design of the front end and its rear slick tail lights were inspired by the Pontiac GTO. Both a two-door hardtop and a convertible were offered through the 1969 model year. Originally the car was a consolation prize for Pontiac, who had initially wished to produce a two-seat sports car of its own design, based on the original Banshee concept car. However, GM feared such a vehicle would directly compete with Chevrolet's Corvette, and the decision was made to give Pontiac a piece of the pony car market by having them share the F-body platform with Chevrolet. The base model Firebird came equipped with the OHC inline-six and a single-barrel carburetor. The next model, the Sprint, had a 4-barrel carburetor, developing 215 HP. Most buyers opted for one of the V8 engines, the 326 SCID, with a 2-barrel carburetor producing 250 HP. The HO engine of the same displacement, but with a 4-barrel carburetor and producing 285 HP. Or the 400 SCID from the GTO with 325 HP. A ram air option was also available in 1968, providing functional hood scoops, higher flow heads with stronger valve springs, and a different camshaft. Power for the ram air package was the same as the conventional 400 HO, but the engine peaked at a higher RPM. The 230 SCID engines were subsequently replaced by 250 SCID-1s, the first developing 175 HP using a single-barrel carburetor, and the other 215 HP with a 4-barrel carburetor. Also for the 1968 model, the 326 SCID engine was replaced by one with a displacement of 350 SCID. An HO version of the 350 SCID with a revised cam was also offered starting in that year, developed 320 HP. Power output of the other engines was increased marginally. In 1969, a $725 optional handling package called the Trans Am Performance and Appearance Package, named after the Trans Am series, which included a rear spoiler, was introduced. Of these first Trans Ams, only 689 hardtops and 8 convertibles were made. There was an additional Ram Air 4 option for the 400 SCID engine during that year, complementing the Ram Air 3. These generated 345 and 335 HP respectively. The 350 HO engine was revised again with a different cam and cylinder heads, resulting in 330 HP. During 1969 a special 303 Accurayan engine was designed for SCCA road racing applications that was not available in production cars. The styling difference from the 1967 to the 1968 model was the addition of federally mandated side marker lights. For the front of the car, the turn signals were made larger and extended to wrap around the front edges of the car, and on the rear, the Pontiac Arrowhead logo was added to each side. The front door vent windows were replaced with a single pane of glass. The 1969 model received a major facelift with a new front-end design, but unlike its big brother the GTO, it did not have the Enduro bumper. The instrument panel and steering wheel were revised. The ignition switch was moved from the dashboard to the steering column with the introduction of GM's new locking ignition switch steering wheel. due to engineering problems that delayed the introduction of the all-new 1970 Firebird beyond the usual fall debut. Pontiac continued production of 1969 model Firebirds into the early months of the 1970 model year. By late spring of 1969, Pontiac had deleted all model year references on Firebird literature and promotional materials, anticipating the extended production run of the then current 1969 models. Engines. Second generation. The second-generation debut for the 1970 model year was delayed until February 26, 1970, because of tooling and engineering problems. Thus, its popular designation as a 1970 1/2 model, while leftover 1969s were listed in early Pontiac literature without a model year identification. Trims: Firebird, Firebird Esprit, Firebird Formula, Firebird Trans Am, Firebird Trans Am WS6, Firebird Skybird, Firebird Redbird, Firebird Yellowbird. Special versions: Black Special Edition, 1976 Gold to 1981 Gold Special Edition, 1978 only. Macho Trans Am, 1976 50th Anniversary Edition, 1978 Firebird Formula Lieutenant Sport Edition, 1979 10th Anniversary Limited Edition, 1980 Pace Car Indy 500 Edition, 1981 NASCAR Edition. Replacing the Coke bottle styling was a more swoopy body style, with the top of the rear window line going almost straight down to the lip of the trunk leader, a look that was to epitomize F-body styling for the longest period during the Firebird's lifetime. The new design was initially characterized with a large C-pillar, until 1975 when the rear window was enlarged. There were two Ram Air 400 Acclaim engines for 1970, the 335 HP Ram Air 3 and GTO, and the 345 HP Ram Air 4 and GTO, that were carried over from 1969. The difference between the GTO and Firebird engines was the secondary carburetor linkage, which prevented the rear barrels from opening completely. Bending the linkage to allow full carburetor operation resulted in identical engine performance. Curb weights rose dramatically in the 1974 model year due to the implementation of 5 mph telescoping bumpers and various other crash and safety-related structural enhancements. SD455 Trans Ams weighed in at 3,850 lb in their first year of production. The 455 engine available in the second-generation Firebird Trans Am was arguably the last high-performance engine of the original muscle car generation. The 455 Acclaim engine made its first appearance in the Firebird in 1971 as the 455 HO, which continued through the 1972 model year. In 1973 and 1974, a special version of the 455, called the Super Duty 455, was offered. The SD455 consisted of a strengthened cylinder block that included 4 bolt main bearings and added material in various locations for improved strength. Original plans called for a forged crankshaft, although actual production SD455s received nodular iron crankshafts with minor enhancements. Forged rods and forged aluminum pistons were specified, as were unique high-flow cylinder heads. The 480,737 code cam was originally specified for the SD455 engine and was fitted into the pre-production test cars, one of which was tested by both Hot Rod and CAR and Driver magazines. However, actual production cars were fitted with a milder 493,323 cam and 1.51 rocker ratios, due to the ever-tightening emissions standards of the era. This cam and rocker combination, combined with a low compression ratio of 8.4:1 advertised, yielded 290 SA net horsepower. It should also be noted that production SD455 cars did not have functional hood scoops, while the pre-production test cars did. Actual production cars yielded 1/4 mile results in the high 14 to 15.0 second per 98 miles per hour range, results that are consistent with a 3,850 pound car and the rated 290 SA net horsepower figure. A production line stock SD455 produced 253 rear wheel HP on a chassis dyno, as reported by High Performance Pontiac magazine. This is also consistent with the 290 SA net horsepower factory rating. Skip McCulley verified that no production SD455s released to the public were fitted with the 480,737 cam. When asked about the compromises for the production SD455 engine, Mr. McCulley responded, "Compression, camshaft, jetting, and vacuum advance." He followed by stating that he would have preferred a compression ratio of 10.25:1, a camshaft with 041 valve timing, slightly richer carburetor jetting, and as much vacuum advance as the engine would tolerate. Regrettably, that proved to be impossible due to the emissions regulations of the era. During a 1972 strike, the Firebird were nearly dropped. Pontiac offered the 455 through the 1976 model year, but tightening restrictions on vehicle emissions guaranteed its demise. Thus, the 1976 Trans Am was the last of the big Q-Birds, with only 7,100 units produced with the 455 engine. The 1974 models featured a redesigned shovel nose front end and new wide-slotted taillights. In 1974, Pontiac offered two base engines for the Firebird, a 100 HP 250 Acclaim inline 6 and a 155 HP 350 Acclaim V8. Available were 175 to 225 HP 400 Acclaim V8 engines, as well as the 455 Acclaim produced 215 or 250 HP, while the SD455 produced 290 HP. The 400, 455, and SD455 engines were offered in the Trans Am and Formula models during 1974. The 1975 models featured a new wraparound rear window with a revised roofline, and the turn signals were moved up from the valance panel to the grilles, which distinguished it from the previous year model. The Super Duty engine, Muncie 4-speed, and Turbo Hydromatic were no longer available in 1975. The 400 was standard in the Trans Am and the 455 was optional for both 1975 and 1976 models. In 1976, Pontiac celebrated their 50th anniversary, and a special edition of the Trans Am was released. Painted in black with gold accents, this was the first anniversary Trans Am package and the first production black and gold special edition. In 1977, Pontiac offered the TA 6.6 Elite 400 rated at 200 HP, as opposed to the regular 6.6 Elite 400 rated at 180 HP. The TA 6.6 equipped engines had chrome valve covers, while the base 400 engines had painted valve covers. In addition, California and high-altitude cars received the Olds 403 engine, which offered a slightly higher compression ratio and a more usable torque band than the Pontiac engines of 1977. A distinctive, slant-nose facelift occurred in 1977, redone somewhat in 1979. From 1977 to 1981, the Firebird used 4 square headlamps, while the Camaro continued to retain the 2 round headlights that had previously been shared by both second-generation designs. The 1977 Trans Am Special Edition became famous after being featured in Smokey and the Bandit. Later on, the 1980 Turbo model was used for Smokey and the Bandit too. Beginning in 1978, the Pontiac Group introduces a new special edition vehicle. The Firebird Formula Lieutenant Sport Edition, which featured a revised 10% raised compression Chevy 305 V8 powertrain producing 155 HP combined with a floor center console 4-speed manual T10BW transmission coupled to a limited slip differential final drive. The limited touring package also included a cabin roof, door, fender and hood graphics scheme, the Trans Am Sports Handling Package with HD gas shocks, modular alloy wheels and the SE Trans Am rear deck spoiler with Formula Word graphic detail. The engineers also revised the compression ratio in the 400Si through the installation of different cylinder heads with smaller combustion chambers. This increased power by 10% for a total of 220 during the 1978 to Euro 79 model years. The 400/403 options remained available until 1979, when the 400 CID engines were only available in the 4-speed transmission Transams and Formulas. 1979 marked the 10th anniversary of the Trans Am, and a special anniversary package was made available, silver paint lower paint with a silver leather interior. The 10th anniversary cars also featured a special Firebird hood decal, which extended off of the hood and onto the front fenders. Pontiac produced 7,500 10th anniversary cars, of which 1,817 were equipped with the Pontiac 400 engine. The only option on these cars was the engine, which dictated the transmission and the gear ratio. In 1979 Pontiac sold 116,535 Transams, which still holds the record to this day. Up until the 1979 models, the performance of 400-equipped Firebirds could still be brought up to near pre-1970 levels by disabling emissions equipment, removing the catalytic converter and blocking off the exhaust gas recirculation system, and opening up the block-off plate to make the hood scoop functional. Static compression ratios dropped in the early 70s, which crippled horsepower and torque output. In 1980, due to ever-increasing emissions restrictions, Pontiac dropped all of its large displacement engines. 1980 therefore saw the biggest engine changes for the Trans Am. The 301, offered in 1979 as a credit option, was now the standard engine. Options included a turbocharged 301 or the Chevrolet 305 small block. In the final year of the second-generation Firebirds, Trans Am still used the same engines as it had in the previous model year, with the only change being the addition of a new electronic carburetion system. The assembly plant code for Norwood, Ohio is N, and for Van Nuys, California it is L. In the later second-generation cars, Norwood used lacquer-based paint, and Van Nuys used water-based paint, due to California's tightening pollution regulations. The water-based paint often failed and delaminated during the warranty period, and subsequently, cars had to be repainted. Engines. Third generation. The availability and cost of gasoline meant the weight and the fuel consumption of the third generation had to be considered in the design. In F-body development, both the third-generation Firebird and Camaro were proposed as possible front-wheel drive platforms, but the idea was scrapped. The state-of-the-art of computerized engine management was in its infancy, and as long as saving fuel was the primary objective, it was not possible to have high horsepower and torque numbers. They did manage to cut enough weight from the design so that acceleration performance would be better than the 1981 models. They also succeeded in the fuel consumption department, offering a 4-cylinder Firebird that would provide 34 miles per gallon. GM executives decided that engineering effort would best be spent on aerodynamics and chassis development. They created a modern platform, so that when engine technology advanced, they would have a well-balanced package with acceleration, braking, handling, and aerodynamics. For the time being, they would have world-class aerodynamics and handling, and excellent fuel economy. The Firebird and Camaro were completely redesigned for the 1982 model year, with the windshield slope set at 62 degrees and for the first time, a large, glass-dominated hatchback that required no metal structure to support it. Two concealed pop-up headlights, a first on the F-body cars, were the primary characteristic that distinguished the third-general Firebird from both its Camaro sibling and its prior form. In addition to being about 500 pounds lighter than the previous second-gen design, the third-generation Firebird was the most aerodynamic product GM had ever released. Wind tunnels were used to form the new F-body platform's shape, and Pontiac took full advantage of it. The aerodynamic developments extended to the finned aluminum wheels with smooth hubcaps and a functional rear spoiler. Styles: Firebird, i4 V8, Series 2 FS, Firebird, V6 per Volt 8, Series 2 FS, Firebird Series 2F, V6 per Volt 8, Firebird Special Edition, V6 per Volt 8, Series 2 FX, Formula Firebird, V8, Series 2 FS, Formula Firebird Series FS, V8, Firebird Trans Am, V8, Series 2 FW, Firebird Trans Am Series FW, V8, Firebird Recaro Trans Am, V8, Series 2 FWY84, Firebird Trans Am GTA, V8, Series 2 FW, Firebird Trans Am GTA Series FW, V8, Firebird. 25th Anniversary Daytona 500 Limited Edition Trans Am, V8, Series 2 FW, Firebird 15th Anniversary Trans Am, V8, Series 2 FW, Engines, Pontiac i4, RPOL Q9, Overhead valves. Cast iron block. Displacement, 151 SID. Bore and stroke, 4.0 x 3.0 in compression ratio. Brake horsepower, at 4,000 rpm. Torque, foot per pounds at 2,400 rpm. Hydraulic valve lifters. Induction, throttle body fuel injected. Ban code, Chevrolet EF556, RPOL B8, overhead valves. Cast iron block. Displacement, 173 SID. Bore and stroke, 3.5 x, in compression ratio. Brake horsepower, 135 at, rpm. Torque, fuel system. Ban code. Chevrolet V6, RPOL C1, overhead valves. Cast iron block. Displacement, 173 SID. Bore and stroke, 3.5 x 3.0 in compression ratio, 8.51. Brake horsepower, at 4,800 rpm. Torque. Hydraulic valve lifters. Carburation, 2-barrel. Ban code. Chevrolet HOV6, RPOL L1, overhead valves. Cast iron block. Displacement, 173 SID. Bore and stroke, 3.5 x 3.0 in compression ratio, 8.91. Brake horsepower, 125 at 5,400 rpm. Torque, 145 foot per pounds at 2,400 rpm. Hydraulic valve lifters. Carburation, 2-barrel Rochester E2 SE. Ban code. Chevrolet 305 V8, RPOL G4, overhead valves. Cast iron block. Displacement, 306 SID. Bore and stroke, 3.74 x 3.48 in compression ratio. Brake horsepower, at 4,000 rpm at 4,200 rpm. Torque, 240 foot per pounds at. Hydraulic valve lifters. Carburation, 4-barrel van code, H. Chevrolet HO. 305 V8, RPOL 69, overhead valves. Cast iron block. Displacement, 306 SID. Bore and stroke, 3.74 x 3.48 in compression ratio, 9.51. Brake horsepower, 190 at 4,800 rpm. Torque, 240 foot per pounds at 3,200 rpm. Hydraulic valve lifters. Carburetor, 4-barrel. Ban code, GN was a Trans Am only option. Came standard on the Y84 1984 Recaro Edition Trans Am SE and 1984 15th Anniversary TA, Chevrolet V8, RPOL B9, overhead valves. Cast iron block. Displacement, 306 SID. Bore and stroke, 3.74 x 3.48 in compression ratio, 9.51. Brake horsepower, at 4,400 rpm. Torque. Hydraulic valve lifters. Induction. Ban code. Chevrolet 305 V8, RPOL U5, overhead valves. Cast iron block. Displacement, 306 SID. Bore and stroke, 3.74 x 3.48 in compression ratio, 9.51. Brake horsepower, at 4,200 rpm. Torque, 240 foot per pounds at. Hydraulic valve lifters 1982-83, ban code. Chevrolet 350 V8, RPOL 98, overhead valves. Cast iron block. Displacement, 350 SID. Bore and stroke, 4.00 x 3.48 in compression ratio, 9.51. Brake horsepower, 210 at 4,000 rpm. Torque, 315 foot-per-pound at 3200 rpm. Hydraulic valve lifters. Induction, tuned port fuel injection. Van code, F includes roller valve lifters, a hardened steel camshaft, fast burn combustion chambers, a remote-mounted coil, dual cooling fans, a low-profile air induction system with aluminum plenum and individual tuned runners, an extruded dual-fuel rail assembly with computer-controlled fuel injectors and a special low-restriction exhaust system. Limited interim availability as base engine in the Trans Am GTA. Optional in Formula Firebird and regular Trans Am engines. Fourth generation. The fourth-generation F-body continued the aerodynamic formula initiated by the previous generation, but saw declining sales. As before, the Camaro kept the exposed headlights and the Firebird its pop-up units, with some minor changes. The overall styling of the Firebird more strongly reflected the Banshee 4 concept car than the 1991 facelift received by the third-generation model. 1993. From 1993 until 1995, Firebirds received a 3.4L V6 with 160 HP, or the 5.70L 275 HP LT1 V8. The 1993 Firehawk received the SLP package with a functional hood scoop and other performance enhancements that increased power to 300 HP. Only 201 were built for 1993. The LT1 engine in the Formula and Trans Am was very similar to the one in the Corvette C4 except with 2 bolt mains and a more restrictive intake exhaust system. The 1993 model year V6 models had angular cable-driven throttle body units that later changed in 1994 to multi-port fuel injection. 1994, the 1994 model year marked the 25th anniversary of the Trans Am, and another anniversary edition was released, painted white with a single blue stripe down the center of the vehicle that was reminiscent of the 1970 Trans Am. It was also the debut of the 4L60 4-speed electronically controlled automatic transmission in the F-body, which took the place of the non-electronic 700R4. Beginning in 1994, the engine used a MAF system in the air intake, rather than the speed density set up on the 1993 cars. 1994 was also the first year the fourth-generation convertible was available. In 1994 only, a Trans Am GT option was available. Trans Am GTs did not receive any special badging, graphics, or emblems and looked externally identical to the base Trans Am cars. The GT package included Z-rated tires and a 155 mph speedometer. Non-GT option Trans Ams in 1994 received a 110 mph speedometer, and a much lower top speed limiter. Contrary to popular belief, the high-rise spoiler, leather, and T-tops were not standard on the Trans Am GT cars in 1994, nor any year of LT1 Trans Am for that matter. RPO code T43 uplift spoiler was an option on all Trans Ams, and while a mass majority of 1994 Trans Am GT cars received the T43 spoiler, it was not part of the Trans Am GT package. Both base Trans Ams and Trans Am GTs could be ordered as hardtop, T-top, or convertible cars and were both available with automatic or manual transmissions. While the GT package was a cost option on the 1994 Trans Am, a majority of 1994 Trans Ams were made with the GT package. All of the 1994 Trans Am GT options became standard in 95-02 as part of the Trans Am package, and the GT name package was dropped for 1995. Some of the early fourth-generation Trans Am and Formula Firebirds will list GT on the vehicle's title or registration. The reason behind this is because the van does not specify a package, it only specifies the engine. Because the title is based on the van alone, titles and registrations often list all of the packages, but it does not mean the car is equipped with any certain package. For instance, there is no such thing as a Firebird Formula Trans Am GT, this is simply the title listing multiple possible trims because the van only specifies a V8 car. To decipher packages on a particular vehicle, RPO codes must be researched for that vehicle. 1995. The 1995 models were the same as those of previous years, but traction control was now available. The Trans Am GT package was dropped this year from the lineup after its one model year run in 1994. For 1995, all Trans Ams received the 155 mph speedometer and Z-rated tires. The steering wheel was also changed. It is shared with other cars from GM, such as the Pontiac Grand Prix. 1995 was the first year of the vented version of the OptiSpark distributor on F-bodies. The optional SLP Firehawk Performance package was still available this year and included suspension upgrades, a functional ram air hood, 17 inches wheels with 27,517 tires, as well as a freer intake exhaust similar to that on the Chevrolet Corvette, supplying 315 HP, but this package was seldom ordered. The transmission perform button was available only in the 1994 and 1995 Formula and Trans Am. This option was stopped for the 1996 and later models, but the connections are still there for 1996 and 1997 Formula and Trans Am. While 1995 cars still used the OBD1 computer system, a majority of them had OBD2 connector ports under the dash. 1996, the mid-1995 and later models had a 200 HP 3.8 LV6 as the base engine, and the power rating of the LT1 had been raised to 285 in 1996, due to a new dual catalytic converter exhaust system. 1996 was also the first year of the OBD2 computer system. 1996 was the first year the WS6 performance package was made available on fourth-generation Firebirds. For 1996 the WS6 package was available on both the Formula and Trans Am. The WS6 package included a larger 32mm front sway bar, a functional ram air hood, 17 inches x 9 wheels with 275/40 tires, and a WS6 badge. Optional Bilstein shocks were available, but not standard on the WS6 package. 1997, while there were no major changes to the 97 models from the previous year, a special edition LT4 Firehawk was available this year. With only 29 produced, the LT4 Firehawk used the same 330 HP, balanced and blueprinted LT4 engine found in the manual transmission 1996 Corvette. The 1997 Firehawk LT4 model, made by SLP Performance Parts and sold through Pontiac dealerships, had 330 HP and 340 lb-ft of torque. The Ram Air High Performance package was added as an option for the Formula and Trans Am convertibles for the first time this year, boosting the horsepower from 285 to 305. There were 41 Formula convertibles and 463 Trans Am convertibles produced in 1997 with the WS6 High Performance package. 1998, in 1998, the Firebird received a facelift dominated by a new front fascia as well as other changes, the most significant of which was the introduction of the latest Corvette small block V8 engine, the LS1. Starting in 1998, Formula and Trans Am cars were equipped with an aluminum driveshaft. 1998 was also the first year the dual-piston front brake calipers and new 12 inches brake rotors. The rear brakes were also increased in size for 1998 as compared to the 1993-1997 years. Other than the front fascia, nothing was changed on the body compared to 1993-1997 years with the exception of the honeycomb-style tail lights, which were found on all models of Firebirds from 1998 to 2002. Initially, the color bright purple metallic had been available, however it was discontinued due to poor sales. The color was replaced with navy blue metallic, but not before a total of 12 Trans Am models with the WS6 Ram Air package made it out of the factory dressed in bright purple metal. However, in 1998 only 255 Formula Firebirds with the WS6 package were made and sold, making them highly sought after now by collectors. 1999, the Big 3-0A new 30th anniversary limited edition Trans Am added a little distinction to the 1999 Firebird offerings. Otherwise, there were only minor changes. Formulas and Trans Ams now had a 4-speed automatic transmission as standard equipment. Buyers could choose from it or a 6-speed manual, which had a Hurst shifter. Traction control was available on V6 Firebirds. Specific V6 Firebirds also got a torsion 2-slip reduction rear axle as standard equipment. An electronic brake force distribution system and solenoid-based Bosch anti-lock brake system enhanced stopping capabilities. Also new was an upgraded sensing and diagnostic module to improve the passenger protection system. Colors: 10 equals Arctic white, 11 equals pewter metallic, 13 equals silver metallic, 20 equals medium blue metallic, 28 equals navy blue metallic, 31 equals bright green metallic, 41 equals black, 79 equals blue-green chameleon and 81 equals bright red Firebird. A Euro Series F/V6. The availability of GM's traction control system was extended to the V6-powered Firebirds this year. All Firebirds with V8 and some with a V6 had a Zexel torsion 2-slip reduction rear axle. An electronic brake force distribution system replaced the old hydraulic proportioning valve for improved brake performance. Also new was a solenoid-based Bosch anti-lock braking system. An enhanced sensing and diagnostic module recorded vehicle speed, engine RPM, throttle position and brake use in the last 5 seconds prior to airbag deployment. Standard equipment for the Firebird Coupe included extensive acoustical insulation, dual front airbags, air conditioning, a black fixed mast antenna at right rear, a brake transmission shift interlock safety feature, power 4-wheel disc brakes with 4-wheel ABS, the UPCL 36-3800 Series 200 HP SF5 V6 engine, cruise control, electric rear and side window defoggers, solar ray tinted glass, instrumentation, sport exterior mirrors, a day-night inside rear view mirror with reading lamps, left and right-hand covered visor vanity mirrors, a Delco AM/FM stereo ETA radio and cassette, reclining front bucket seats, 4-way driver and passenger front seat manual adjusters, a rear 2-passenger folding seat, a 4-spoke sport tilt steering wheel with adjustable column, the PASS Key 2 theft deterrent system, P215/60 or 16 touring tires with a high-pressure compact spare, the UPCM 55-speed manual transmission, controlled cycle windshield wipers and bright silver 16-inch 5-spoke cast aluminum wheels. Model number, FS. Body style number, 87, 67. Body type and seating, 2D hatchback, convertible 4P. Factory price, $18,700, $25,320. Shipping weight, 3,340, 3,465 pounds. Production total, 17,170, 1,245. 1998 to Euro 2002. For 1998 to Euro 2002, Pontiac used the same heavy-duty brakes, steering ratios, fuel pumps and shocks on both V6 and V8 models. The all-aluminum 5.7L V8 engine was sourced from the Corvette C5, and produced 305 HP at 5,200 rpm. 335 lb-AFT at 4,000 rpm, or 320 HP in the WS6 Ram Air version. In 2001 and 2002, models equipped with a V8 received a high-flow LS6 intake manifold and a high-performance clutch. A Firehawk model, produced by SLP and sold through Pontiac dealerships, had 330 HP. Engines. Firebird Trans Am. The Trans Am was a specialty package for the Firebird, typically upgrading handling, suspension, and horsepower, as well as minor appearance modifications such as exclusive hoods, spoilers, fog lights and wheels. In using the name Trans Am, a registered trademark, GM agreed to pay $5 per car sold to the SCCA. 4 distinct generations were produced between 1969 and 2002. These cars were built on the F-body platform, which was also shared by the Chevrolet Camaro. Despite its name, the Trans Am was not initially used in the Trans Am series, as its smallest engine exceeded the SCCA's 5-liter displacement limit. The second generation was available from 1970 to 1981 and was featured in the 1977 movie Smokey and the Bandit, the 1978 movie Hooper and the 1980 movie Smokey and the Bandit 2. The third generation, available from 1982 to 1992, was featured in the 1983 movie Smokey and the Bandit Part 3 and the 1984 movie Alphabet City. KITT, the automotive star, and its evil counterpart KARR, of the popular 1980s TV series Knight Rider, was a modified third-generation Trans Am. The fourth-generation Trans Am, available from model years 1993 to 2002, offered between $275 and $325 at BHP. The Trans Am GTA was an options package available on the Firebird Trans Am, which added gold 16-inch diamond spoke alloy wheels, a monochromatic paint scheme and special Closona copyright GTA badges. The GTA was the brainchild of former Pontiac marketing manager Lou Wassell. It was intended to be the ultimate Trans Am and was the most expensive Firebird available. The GTA equipment package officially went on sale in 1987 and avoided a gas guzzler tax thanks to its lightweight PW 16 inches gold crosslace wheels. The high-performance WS6 suspension package was also retuned to offer a more compliant ride while still maintaining tight handling characteristics. Engine choices consisted of an L98 5.7-litre TPI V8 mated to GM's corporate 700R4 automatic transmission or the 5.0-litre TPI V8. A 5-speed manual was available but was mated to the 5.0-litre only. The fastest TA originally conceived by Bill Owen of Pontiac, the 20th anniversary Turbo Trans Am project was outsourced to PAS, Incorporated, an engineering firm led by Jeff Beitzel. Beitzel and his team did most of the TTA development work. The V6 turbo engines were built by PAS at their 40,000-square-foot City of Industry, California plant. From there, they went to GM's plant in Van Nuys, California to be installed into GTAs on the F-body assembly line. The cars were then shipped back to PAS for final assembly, testing, and quality control. Incidentally, the GTA chassis was selected at random, thus there is no correlation between the van and production sequence number. The actual number of cars to be produced had ranged from 500 to 2,500 until GM finally settled on 1,500. In all, a total of 1,555 turbo TAs were manufactured. Firebird Trans Am GTA, the last WS6 model, produced 310 horsepower at 5,400 RPMs and 340 pounds-ft of torque at 4,000 RPMs out of its 5.7-litre LS1 V8 engine. A completely stock WS6 completed the A1 quarter-a-mile in 13.16 seconds at 106.05 miles per hour on Eagle F1 street tires. Engines: first generation, second generation, third generation. From 1982 on, all engines are Chevrolet sourced, unless stated otherwise. Fourth generation. Performance, racing. Firebirds were used in the Trans Am series in the 1960s and 1970s. When the Firebird Trans Am was released, there was controversy over the model's inability to compete in the Trans Am because the smallest available engine was too large for use in the series at 400 cubic inches. The name also caused controversy because it was used without permission from the SCCA, who threatened suit. GM settled the dispute by paying $5 to the SCCA for every car sold. When the Trans Am was last seen, model year 2002 Firebirds were in use. Firebirds were used in the IROC series until it folded after the 2006 season. During the 1995, 1996, and 1997 NHRA seasons, 14-time Funny Car champion John Force used a Firebird body to replace the obsolete Oldsmobile Cutlass and Chevrolet Lumina body he had used since 1988. He used it for 3 seasons, winning the championship in all 3 years. The Firebird was also used by drivers such as Del Worsham, Tim Wilkerson, Frank Pedregan, and Jerry Tolliver. The Firebird body also replaced the Oldsmobile Cutlass in the Pro Stock class in 1995, forcing drivers Warren Johnson, Jerry Ekman, and Mark Buck to replace their body styles for the 1996 year. None of them would win with the first year of the Firebird body, but Pro Stock driver Jim Yates, a second-year driver, using the Firebird body, would. References. External links: Firebird Heritage Official Pontiac site, Pontiac Firebird at DMOZ, Pontiac Firebird and Pontiac Trans Am at the Crittenden Automotive Library, the Fire Chicken Restoration Project of 1987 Firebird.